Yes. So the next thing is authentication to Azure. If you have any experience with Azure PowerShell, maybe now it's time to kind of ask for that, like Azure PowerShell users. Just a couple. Okay. So when you work with Azure PowerShell, you first need to authenticate to Azure so that you can work with it, right? And there are some challenges with that people usually try to use their Live or Outlook or Hotmail accounts and use that with get credentials and pass the PS credential, but that's not supported because it's supported only when your account is actually a part of the Azure Active Directory, right? So there are certain challenges with that. Or if you work with the Azure CLI, because this is also supported in Azure Cloud Shell, then you have that web browser-based login, and people would like to be authenticated immediately when they want to manage resources, as long as they are, for example, already authenticated to Azure Portal. The third thing is access to our tools. So you can spend a lot of time to customize and nicely configure your admin machine, but then you will get a call from your colleague, you will get to his office, and you will try to help there, but you will not have access to your machines because your machine is still in your office, or you are somewhere in a Starbucks or whatever, or you are enjoying a time at the beach, but you don't have access to your tools. With this Azure Cloud Shell, you will have access to your tools even when you are on vacation. I don't think that's the good thing, but you have options, right? And options are good, right? So what is a Cloud Shell? In a nutshell, a Cloud Shell is interactive, web-based shell for managing Azure resources. The important thing here is interactive. So it's not for a long-running tasks, because it's timed out. It will time out. It's for interactive work. It's a browser-based. And the good thing is it automatically authenticates you to your Azure subscription. So you don't need to take care of that. And also the tools that are part of it, they are pre-installed there, they are also authenticated and configured for you, which is amazing. So it's an environment that is completely pre-configured with lots of common CLI tools that we can use. Another thing is that it's accessible from a laptop or a desktop or a tablet. And also there is a mobile app, Azure, that runs on iPhone and Android-based phones, and Cloud Shell is part of that as well. So you can access Azure Cloud Shell on your phone. I had some discussion with Jeffrey Snover on the first day about Azure Cloud Shell, and said that one of the main problems, how to explain what it is to people, is that they don't need to care about the environment where Azure Cloud Shell runs, actually, because they are not managing that environment. So you can think about Azure Cloud Shell as some kind of a jump box for managing your Azure resources, right? So it's a managed environment managed by Microsoft, and you just use the resources on it, and the tools on it, to access and manage your Azure resources. You will not go to that environment and run get service to learn more about that environment. That's not important for you. It's a temporary environment for you as long as you are performing those tasks. When you are done, you don't care about it, really, right? So don't spend energy on it. No, it's just for the purpose of it is just to expose all those tools to you. So we have two different environments. We have a Linux environment and we have a Windows environment. Very often you can see in the documentation it's called like a bash in an Azure Cloud Shell and a PowerShell in Azure Cloud Shell. The first one is a GA, the PowerShell one is still in a public preview. Recently we found out that there are some big changes in front of us because the PowerShell team thinks that there is no real need anymore for maintaining a Linux environment and the Windows environment here, as we have PowerShell Core now that runs on both. And PowerShell Core is already supported in both versions of Cloud Shell environment. So why not use just a Linux environment and run all tools there, including PowerShell? And my idea for this presentation was to spend more time in that environment instead of the environment that it's now called PowerShell in Cloud Shell. But I realized, because that's a work in progress, I realized there are a couple of bugs there that will kind of ruin your experience during this session if I do everything there. So I will try to do as much as I can in a Linux and the PowerShell Core on top of it, and some of the other tools. But I will also use the one that we still have that will probably disappear very soon, but not tomorrow, right? Because there are still some bugs that need to be resolved and some other things, okay? I just want to make that clear, that my idea was actually to kind of do everything in the Linux environment with the PowerShell Core and all the modules on top of it, but that's still not completely done. I found some strange bugs, and that will be kind of a bad thing. So what are the requirements for working with Azure Cloud Shell? The first thing is that when you work with something that it's browser-based, you need to think about supported browsers, right? So the supported browsers are Edge and Chrome and Firefox, even Internet Explorer and Safari. So all the modern browsers are supported. My personal experience is only on Edge and Chrome, because when it was like early days of it, the Internet Explorer had some issues, so I decided not to use it for my own purposes. But if you still use Internet Explorer, you can try it, and it should work there as well. You also need to have Azure subscription that it's capable of creating storage accounts, because there are certain Azure subscriptions that don't allow you to do that, but for Azure Cloud Shell it's needed because you need to have a persistent storage. You need to have a way to store some of your scripts and reports and all the stuff somewhere, so that when you are using Azure Cloud Shell for the next time, you still have access to the things that you've done when you use it previously, really, right? So how is that executed? Using Azure File Shares. And this is the process during the initial creation of a Cloud Shell. I will show you just a slide with how it looks like, just to explain you some changes that they recently introduced there. Also, it's interesting that the Azure File Shells that it's supported needs to be locally redundant or geo-redundant, which means that if you have a storage account that it's based on a premium storage, you cannot use it for these purposes, right? So you create just a simple standard storage account, and that's a good thing because that one is cheaper, and you pay only for the written data. So scripts are not that big, and you should really think about this service as like a free service. Azure Cloud Shell as itself is free, but you are paying only for a storage. But we are thinking about cents and pennies, really, right? It's just like very, very cheap, right? And this is a thing that just changed very recently, is that before, I think, just like a week ago, the file shares will be mounted to assigned region to you. So if you are in Europe and you are in Hanover, the closest region to you is West Europe, which is in Amsterdam. So you will not get an option to pick any other. And I think one of my first feedback was that that's kind of problematic for people that are traveling around the world. Because if you are, for example, right now in Singapore and you work there, you will be assigned to Southeast Asia, but that's just like a training of 5 days, and then you move back to New York and it doesn't work there so well because you have a latency that is not needed, so you will need to kind of change things. And if you want something that is more permanent and where you're spending more time, it's better for you to have a chance actually to pick a region that it's suitable for you, right? So they changed that, and that's a good thing. So how does it work? It's actually a terminal emulator, and it's based on the open source project called Xterm.js. Microsoft is contributing to that one also to make the experience with Cloud Shell better. It's on a GitHub, so you can look and see how it looks like. If you have some ideas and you can fix it, you can also submit the PRs or just submit the issues if you want. It's supported by Azure Container Instances. So during all the time, like thousands containers are actually waiting for people to connect with the Cloud Shell, and then they will provide through the WebSocket the terminal experience for you. And I will show you later when we connect to one of them how I know that they actually wait for you. It's not that when you click on an icon that they just start container for you. The containers are already there and they just wait for you to connect to them and get the console. So let me show you our experience, and then we will talk about how to actually start it, but I just want to show you a little bit of how it actually looks. So we can do that here. So the first experience for people is they logged into Azure Portal, and then the next to a bell icon is this icon, and that's a Cloud Shell. When you click on it, if it's already installed, it will start the latest one that you used. In this case, that was Bash for me, so it just started the Bash here. As you can see, it was quite fast here because I already, with that account, have started in some other environments already. So that container was kind of ready for me in a Cloud Shell. So this is how it works here when you go to Portal and want to start it. But people wanted to have it kind of separated from a portal so that they can directly, with just the proper URL, start the icon shell. And what they did, they created a shell.azure.com that can give you a way to connect immediately to a Cloud Shell. If you say /bash, you get into a Bash environment. If you say /PowerShell, you get into PowerShell environment. Isn't that all cool? Right? It looks really, really nice. You press F11, you get it full screen, and you just enjoy it. So let's talk, I mean, if I'm still in Bash here, but it doesn't matter because the interface is the same for the Bash or the PowerShell. Just if you don't have experience with it, just to show you a little bit of things that are exposed to you here in the interface. So this button here will restart a Cloud Shell, which will signal to Azure to give you completely new environment, completely new container with everything. So be careful with that one, because if you have some unsaved work, you will lose it, okay? And that, let's call it like a hard restart, is different than the timeout that will happen if you are not active for 20 minutes. Because with that one, you still have some time to get back to your environment. With this one, you will actually force them to give you a completely new one, okay? Then we have here access to help and settings. Settings are not kind of you don't have a lot of things to change here. You can change a text size to small, medium, and large. The one that you've seen is, and I was in, so this is the experience when you are not active for 20 minutes. I didn't plan to show you right now, but it's not the bad time because, again, this is kind of a Bash, so it starts very quickly now. So settings, text size small, medium, large. Large is maybe interesting for you right now, and you can change the font a little as well. What is interesting is when we talk about fonts, and if your preferred web browser is Chrome, some nice people created extensions for Chrome that you can use here so that you can put and use a font that you like. Creator of the one that I'm using is Kees Singh. He's part of the Azure Compute team, and he was not happy with the default settings, and before they actually added a way to change a font, he created these extensions and a team for working in Chrome with Cloud Shell, and I really like it because you have a little bit of a control, which is always good. So and that works when you work with Chrome. Another thing is that recently they also added upload file feature, which is just awesome. So you have a local file, you want to upload it in your Cloud Shell environment, you click on that button, you get window for browsing files and you edit. Drag and drop is also supported. For now, you cannot pick destination directory in an environment, but that's not such a big issue. Also, I would like us to, again, get options for that too.
Is it always the current path which
I'm not sure really, but I will show it goes into a home directory. So if you want to have multiple tabs that are connected to a same environment, like bash, 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 you just click here and you get another one that it's connected, okay? You need to be careful that you cannot have at the same time with the same account a connection to a PowerShell environment and a bash environment. So if you try to change that, you will get a warning that all the open bash instances will be closed and you will switch to a PowerShell, so like be careful if you do that. So for demo purposes, for example, or for some way when I'm doing this as during the presentations, I usually work with the two separate accounts, and one account is used for bash experience, one account is used for a PowerShell experience, so it is easier for me than to switch back and forth and we need to wait. Because one of the main issues actually with the PowerShell environment is that the starting time is a little bit long. PowerShell, the bash Cloud Shell starts in between 3 and 5 seconds. The PowerShell one between 35 and 45 seconds. And that's one of the biggest issue actually, and one of the greatest benefits that we will gain once when they move completely to Linux containers as a platform. Because we will not wait anymore that long. So people say like, that's not that important because when I'm connected, okay, I can go and grab a coffee and then return and start working, and it's not that I need to do that like 20 times a day, but still it's kind of better when you have kind of instant access to the things. Question?
Have you also noticed that it times out a lot faster than 20 minutes?
Sometimes. So the question was like, sometimes the timeout is a little bit shorter than 20 minutes. You are right. I mean, I have experience when I'm kind of surprised and I thought like, did I really was on a phone call for 20 minutes or maybe that person was just that boring? I'm not sure. But like, you know, it happens sometimes. And I don't know if, I have a feeling that it's better than before because I'm not kind of paying attention anymore to that kind of a timeout, especially when I work in a bash environment. I just kind of restart, because the thing is, if you time out for after 20 minutes, you still have 30 minutes time window to reconnect to a same environment where you were. So you will get this access to a same container that was assigned to you before the timeout. So it's actually 50 minutes if you think about it. You should not. I mean, if you have some unsaved and you are quick enough to kind of reconnect in a window of 30 minutes, you should not lose everything, as far as I know. I mean, I tested those things and I returned to my previous environment okay. That's the difference between reconnecting after a timeout and hard restart with the button, right? So that's a little bit different. So let's get back to okay. Okay, so the thing that I can suggest is that if you still have issues that the timeout is really short, they have a user voice that they are monitoring constantly for issues that people have. And it's not a marketing talk, and I'm not kind of a Microsoft person that will tell you, let's just go there and submit something and then we will ignore you. No, it's not true. They're actually following up with you and they will check those things. So if they see after this session even that the 3 users or more will complain about the shorter timeout, they will investigate. Because it's not good for them to have that kind of a problem with customers, really, right? So please do that. I don't have that problem myself and I don't complain, but just preparing this session, I filed 5 bugs. So like, they need to know that, because if I don't do that, then we will wait for someone else to find it, and it's just a waste of time for me and some other users as well, right? So try to communicate with them because they actually listen. So what are the concepts here? And we mentioned some of those. So the Cloud Shell runs on a temporary machine, on a temporary container that it's assigned to you for a certain period of time. You cannot pick that. You cannot kind of return 2 days later to the same one. So forget about that. It's just there when you start it. It's assigned to you as a one machine per account. So this is why I'm saying that because the support for Bash is a Linux Ubuntu container, support for PowerShell is at this time Windows Server Core containers. So as it's one machine per user, you can have with one user access to both environments at the same time. That's the reason for it, okay? But that will, as I said, change, and they will move everything to Linux containers. In theory, the timeout is 20 minutes. It used to be 10 during a preview, but people complained, and then they increased that to 20. And you can use Cloud Shell only if you have properly configured that file share. The thing is that you don't need to care so much about doing it because they will do that for you. So this is the first experience for you. You will get first the welcome screen that I've just removed here. And this is what you get when you click on Show Me Advanced Settings, because with Advanced Settings, you can actually specify your own names for storage account, resource group, storage account, and a file share. And as you can see here, we can now pick a region as well. So you pick a subscription, then you pick the region that is suitable for you, and then create new or existing resources in Azure to create a file share. After that, you will be asked to pick a Bash or PowerShell, and you will get one of those first, but then you can switch later, because I don't think that actually I've shown you that for people that didn't try. We have this drop-down menu when you actually switch between those two. My prediction is that what will happen in the future, that they will still maintain this drop-down menu. Doesn't matter that the underlying container will be Linux for both experiences, but you will, if you pick Bash, you will go into Bash shell on Linux. If you pick PowerShell, you will go into PowerShell Core prompt on Linux. I don't know if that's true. I think that is kind of a logical next step for them, because you will just save one step, not to go into Bash first and then type the command for going into PowerShell, right? So you will kind of have a seamless experience with this, and you should not care actually about underlying operating system. Only how to kind of deal with the file system there, but that's it. You are not managing that machine. You are using tools on it to go and manage resources in Azure, right? So let's talk a little bit about persisting storage. And as you've seen on the previous screen, you can pick the names that you like, but if you accept all default ones, the naming convention there is to have a resource group called cloud-shell-storage-region. So that's the one that you will look for if you use default ones. Storage account is a CS and then some unique GUID, and the file share is cs-user-domain-com-unique GUID for it, right? So this is what you get by default. If you want your own, then you use advanced settings, and I think that's kind of a better because you have full control of all those things. So with persisting storage, you can save files there, and when you connect again, you will get access to all your files. In Bash, how they do that, they have kind of two approaches. So they create a disk image that it's mapped to your home, and then they have there that image that has a name, ACC_user image. Do you know why is it ACC? Because Azure Cloud Shell is ACS. ACC is because during preview, this feature was called Azure Cloud Console, CC. So they changed the name for marketing and all that, but the underlying in the code, when you look at it, you will see those ACC strings at a couple of places. One of them is the image. When you look at the environment variables, they're about Cloud Shell. You will also see ACC as a prefix for those things, and don't be surprised with that. The reason is preview, which is very often with them. They have one working name or preview name, and then they change it, but not everywhere, because they don't want to change code, right? Code works, it's closed, right? And everything is fine there. Also, one thing that's specified a file share to a cloud drive, right? So whatever you store there, you will get access to that in your next session. So let's talk first. Also, the team is PowerShell in Azure Cloud Shell, but I want to show you the differences between the tools that are exposed to you right now in a Bash and the PowerShell experience, and how can we actually benefit once when they move everything to Linux, actually. So this is the list of all languages that are pre-configured and pre-installed in Bash experience for you. As you can see, it's a variety of those to make all developers happy. .NET, Go, Java, Node.js, PowerShell Core, and Python. And they try to get the latest versions of it. Just look at the version of PowerShell Core. The latest one. It's just amazing. So let's look at tools. Look at the tools. The list is just fantastic. You have support for different shells. You have support for Azure tools, text editors, Vim, Nano, Emacs, source control, Git, support for build tools, containers, databases, just amazing stuff. If you want to use some other automation tools, we also have access to Terraform in Ansible. One of the worst things with those two is that pre-configured steps and pre-authorization and all that, you don't need to pay attention to that at all. Everything is done for you. Just fantastic. You immediately start using it. You don't waste time to install and configure. Is it Kubernetes part of it? If you see kube control, or there are different ways of pronouncing it. I use kube control, but that's the one for interacting with Kubernetes. Okay. So this is those are the tools on Bash. Those are the languages and tools on PowerShell. So see, you can put them all on one slide. For Linux, I needed 2 slides. So you can already see that we will get lots of more when we completely move everything on Linux, because then we don't need to switch back and forth. For example, right today, if you work with a PowerShell, then you said, oh, I need to do something with the Terraform. Do you see Terraform here? No. Do you see Ansible here? No. But once when you have everything on Linux, then we can just reuse all those tools from one environment without going back and forth to different versions of a Cloud Shell. Support here is quite nice, and the problem is just you need to maintain 2 environments. And if the new version of something is released, you need to update it, images for both experiences, right? So that's just a waste of time and resources. And I'm really happy about that change that they will do. So what are the PowerShell Cloud Shell specific features that we will get when we connect to PowerShell? So right now, PowerShell Cloud Shell runs on Windows Server Core container. Okay? And when you do that, when you connect to it, you have all the administrative privileges. When you connect to a Bash experience, you are a regular user. You don't have access to sudo. Okay? So that's the difference. And what will happen in the future when we move everything to Linux containers, we will not have all the permissions. Maybe they will change it, I'm not sure, but I don't expect that they will change it, because they like to kind of limit some of the things that you can do, because there is no need for lots of things to change it. You can install something in a user space and then it will work there. So what we get with a PowerShell, and those things are available to you when you work with a full PowerShell or when you work with a PowerShell Core. And they're also available to you when you work on Windows environment or a Linux. On Linux, they're still a little bit buggy, some of them, but that will change. So we have Azure namespace, capability to discover and browse the Azure resources. What does that mean? That Azure namespace is actually Azure PS Drive. So if you are familiar with the concept of PS Drive, you know what that means. That means that they look at the data structure of Azure, and they created something that allow you to browse Azure resources like their file system, which is kind of cool. You will see how that works. It's just amazing. You also have a way with some new commandlets that they created for this environment to interact with the VMs, which is also pretty good. And I expect that those things will also change a little. And if you are not happy with all the modules that are pre-installed for you, you can actually add new modules from the PowerShell Gallery and work with things that you want, right? If they release a new version of something, but Microsoft is a little bit slow, but you just need it that day, right? You can just install it from PowerShell Gallery and get it, and not wait for them to update the image of that container. So let's move now to demos and spend time there. So the thing here is that, okay, here we are in a Bash experience, okay? So when you are in a Bash experience, you can first check that you are on Linux, okay? And try to find a PowerShell Core. As you know, the PowerShell Core doesn't start anymore with the word PowerShell. They change it, and now when you want to start PowerShell Core, you say psh. I don't know seriously how to pronounce this because PWSH is just not good enough, right? And psh is always fun, and you have a little bit of a smiling faces in the room when you present. So right now I'm connected on a Linux box to my PowerShell Core. As you can see, I'm not at the PowerShell Core prompt. I'm immediately in my Azure PS Drive. Okay? So, how it works. When I'm in my Azure Drive, I want to see what's available to me, and if I run dir command, I will get a list of my accounts that are available that I can connect to. So I have only one, and I can connect to that one. So the tab completion works, which is in this case extremely useful because the name is of my subscription is long. As you can see, they also improved experience a little here, so they don't change a prompt when you are moving through your Azure subscription. At first, they used to kind of give you all the paths where you are. As you can see, in this case, I will need to go here outside of a screen really to find where I am, right? So this is much better experience. They also give us something that it's really neat. I like this concept, so that if you want to have immediately access to all resources, you will now go to all resources, which kind of let's think about like a virtual directory, right? Some kind of a view for the guys that are kind of database administrators, right? Of all the things, you go to that one. And they have access for now to Azure, to resource groups, storage accounts, virtual machines, and the web apps. The cool thing here is that you can just now browse your virtual machines, and tab completion should work, but I tried it before, and I have some kind of issues with it. No? Virtual. I didn't? I'm still at, okay, you're right. Thank you. Oh no, no, I was there. Let me see. Okay. So now that I'm here, if I run there, I will only, of all my resources, I will only get virtual machines. And what is really interesting here as well is that they created a new commandlet that can give you, once when you are here, they will give you only appropriate commandlets that work with the compute resources. Not all of the command lists that are available to you, but just those that kind of make sense in this context, which is really good. And you say, get Azure RM command, and you get that, right? It's pretty cool. I like this part. And there is one feature that I like a lot that it's still kind of broken in the Linux environment. So I will switch now to PowerShell environment just to show you that one, because I think that that one is really, really cool there. So here we are in PowerShell environment. Let me see where I am. Okay, so there, here. And the interesting thing is you always see this progress bar when you access something for the first time. Later, the output will be much faster because they will use the cache results.